Hello, everyone. We are officially live. This is the first episode of the Ghoulfriends podcast. And so it is just me and my lovely cousin Alana. And we're just kicking back and we're going to talk all things horror, spooky, scary, anything that we feel like talking about. So sit back, get a glass of bubbly or something warm and cozy while we chill your bones with some, what are we talking about this week? Serial killers.
Hell yeah, let's do it.
Yeah. So as you guys know, I'm sure Netflix has been coming out with an ass ton of serial killer documentaries as of late, and they've all been landing beautifully. I've really enjoyed them.
Mm-hmm.
How about you, Alana? Which ones have you seen?
I saw Sons of Sam, The Night Stalker, Horror at the Cecil Hotel. I also don't know if you saw Why Did You Kill Me, but that one was a really interesting documentary too. It's not really a serial killer, but it's still like a murder mystery. And um, no spoilers, but it's about this girl and she gets tied up with like this guy, and she doesn't realize that he's involved in like organized crime and all this shit. And he kills her in a drive-by shooting.
Oh,
And
shit.
yeah, it's so interesting. But like, she's like kind of telling the story, like, because it's like showing like her messages from MySpace, and her mom's narrating the messages, and it's really chilling, but it's really cool. I enjoyed it a lot.
Oh, MySpace. Back in the day.
Oh my god,
Uh,
those were the days. Yo, tell me how I was able to like rewrite like the HTMLs from MySpace, and now I barely like know how to do like 2 plus 2.
but that one, Why Did You Kill Me? A coworker was actually just telling me about that one today, so I guess I definitely have to watch it now.
Oh yeah, and the good thing is it's not like a series, it's like a movie. So it's only like an hour and a half. But during that hour and a half you really have to be paying attention. Like it's not like Sons of Sam or Night Stalker where if you miss something you could just go back, or they'll
Right.
cover it in the next episode. Like if you miss it, it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
There's another one like that. I want to say it was called An American Murder, and it
Oh
was
yeah.
about the guy that killed his what? Spoiler alert! He kills his wife and kids.
I mean, I in case anybody didn't know that already. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I didn't even know about the case before I saw the documentary. So,
Yeah, me too. I saw it on Lifetime, like when Lifetime played the movie, because I like Lifetime
gotcha.
movies for some reason.
So, that documentary was super interesting because it didn't have a narrator. It didn't have an overlay. It was just simply the police body cam footage, the interview footage, her shit from Facebook, And it was just a very interesting way to do it because it just gives you everything. And as the viewer, it's like you make the judgment.
Right. Exactly. But the thing with that one is I feel like where he gets you is, spoiler alert again, in case you haven't seen it, go look up Chris Watts. Actually don't, because it's
That's
really
his
fucking
name.
sick. Um but I mean, if you want to, go look it up, but I don't recommend you do because it's really sick. But anyway, um but the thing that I always found was kind of interesting, where he kind of gets you and kind of makes you think, is in his interview where he says she strangled the children and then he killed her in retaliation. And you're kind of like, okay, like I kind of see his point, because we weren't there. We don't know what truly happened. Not and like I said, it's not saying that she did, but you're just kind of like, okay, like, that would also make sense. But then, this guy's like out of his mind insane. Like he dropped them in an oil tank. So like it's obvious that it's pointing to him, but at the same time, like I said, it kind of makes you think.
Yeah. And you got to wonder, I mean, with these killers, like how much is truth and how much is
Right.
fiction? Because the best lies have a little truth in them.
Right. Exactly. And it's kind of like, and some killers, you see them like kind of like turn like, state's witness. And like with Ted Bundy, when he helped the Green River killer, you're like, why is he helping them? Like, obviously, Ted's gonna know like how a serial killer thinks and acts, but it kind of makes you wonder, like, what was his turning point that he was kind of like, okay, let me help them? Like, why?
Well, and this is one reason why you have to watch the Ted Bundy tapes, because, yeah, Alon hasn't watched it. Um, but he loved to talk about himself. He just, and to make himself seem super smart
Yeah,
and,
obviously, yeah, he was his own attorney at trial and all that fun shit, yeah.
oh yeah, well, and his whole thing was like he wanted to be a big hotshot lawyer. You know, he came from like lower middle class, and he wanted to rise above his station, I guess. And
Right.
you know, so he was very full of himself and tried to present himself as this kind of fat cat sort of guy when he wasn't. So, I mean, anytime anyone wanted to talk to him and be like, Ted, can you help us? Can you give us your expert insight on this? Like, of course, he's gonna run his fucking mouth.
Oh, yeah.
He wants attention. And I think that's
Right, exactly. So, you froze. I'm
oh,
sorry, you froze.
you froze for a second too.
Yeah.
Okay, you're back.
Yeah. But you know what? I think that that's kind of common and it's different from Dahmer. And that always fascinated me too, because in a lot of ways he knew what he was doing was wrong, because when he was arrested, he said, "For what I did, I should be dead." So you
Yeah.
kind of wonder, do they have that little voice inside their head, like that kind of like they're kind of like, oh, like I know this is wrong, I shouldn't be doing this, but then they have the urge to do so, and they can't really control that, and that's what makes it happen.
Right. Well, and then comes in to the conversation, you know, the question of evil and what is true evil. And like Richard Ramirez, you know, he said, you know, the devil spoke to him and he was doing the devil's work and et cetera, et cetera. So, and I think also a lot of killers don't want to fully admit all the shit that they did. You know, Bundy certainly didn't. And so it's tricky
Exactly.
to really know everything they did, everything that is coming out of their mouths, if it's true or not.
Right. Right. And like I said, and you have Ramirez, and then, speaking on Sons of Sam, you have him, and he's like, okay, my dog told me to kill those people. And you're
Right.
just kind of like, what? Like, I don't know if
Right.
you've ever seen the movie Summer of Sam, but that's all about
No.
the son of Sam too. And it was my favorite movie growing up. So was Zodiac. I don't know why, but it was. And but Zodiac's another one because they never found out who he was. You
See,
know,
that's the spookiest shit of all, is the ones that they don't catch. Well, and with
right,
Sons of Sam, it's like, who else was involved? Who else is
right.
still involved?
Right, because you don't know. And that's what Sons of
Right.
Sam makes you think about. And it's like I said, Zodiac, they never found him. They never found the guy who, I don't know if you've ever seen The Town That Dreaded Sundown. Um,
Mm-mm.
the 1946 Texarkana Moonlight Murders. It was like Zodiac, but it was in Texas, and they never found the guy. You seen Friday the 13th Part 2?
Yeah.
You know how Jason wears the sack over his head?
Yeah.
That's what this guy did. So they called him the Phantom because nobody ever saw him. Nobody knew who he was. They never found him. And it makes you wonder, okay, who else is involved with this person? Because, how does one person get that lucky that they keep eluding police, especially Zodiac?
Right. Right. Give me 1 second. Hold on. Oh, I'm coming. Oh, yep. Oh. Okay, let's hope I don't totally mess up my setup. Okay. Um,
By the way, I just want to give a quick plug to Trod's Beer. If you haven't, try it. This video is not sponsored in any way, shape, or form, but somebody please sponsor me.
I mean, we could do that.
Yeah, yeah. Netflix, please sponsor me. I'll write your next serial killer documentary.
Yeah, there we go.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, the whole aspect of not really knowing the full story, it's so fascinating and also terrifying.
Yeah.
Because in all honesty, I didn't really know much about the Son of Sam. I just knew it was a guy that went and shot people.
Yeah.
And so when I watched the documentary, I learned more about it. I learned more about him, and then the whole like cult and Satanism aspect of it, which
Right.
I had no idea about. That blew my mind. And
Yeah,
the amount of evidence and the type of evidence that, um, excuse me, Maury Terry got, it was just
right,
fascinating.
exactly. And the cult theory is actually new because, as I mentioned, Summer of Sam, it's like a biopic, but it's about him. So it's like if you've seen Zodiac, it's like that. But Summer of Sam, doesn't really touch so much on the cult aspect. There's a lot of sets in that movie, and that's pretty much all it focuses on, while still
Hmm.
focusing on him. So, like the whole cult theory and aspect was news to me when I saw it too, because like I said, even though that was my favorite movie, I never even, thought about that. And it's not, like I'm saying, it's not just him. It makes you wonder, like with these other serial killers, how many other people are involved that, you don't know about, because you really think a serial killer is going to sit there and be like, "Yep, this person did it with me," and blah 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 blah. No, they're a lot of times they're going to say that they acted alone.
Yeah, whether it's because they don't want to sell the other person out, or they're afraid of the other person, or the notoriety, and they're like, yeah, I did all this myself, because you
Right.
got those guys too.
Right, which then goes into the psychological aspect, are they a narcissist?
Hmm.
Do they have antisocial personality? I'm not a psychotherapist. I just know what that stuff is. I mean, you can
Yeah,
look it up on friggin' Wikipedia and find out about it.
right. Well, and you know what? Watching Mindhunter,
Mhm.
love that show. That is an awesome show. I highly recommend it. Coming from a criminal justice background, I really, really enjoyed it, but I think anyone would really enjoy it. Um, but when they did the episode where they go to talk to Berkowitz, the way they frame it is that, like, he did it all, and it was all him and stuff, and he was pissed off that the media was saying that, well, the media picked up a psychologist had said that he used a 44 caliber because he was sexually, what's the word I'm looking for?
Aroused?
No, that impotent.
Mm.
And so basically, like, compensating, like small pee pee truck kind of thing. And and
Ugh,
saying that, him pulling the trigger, that was like the orgasm. But the thing is his crimes weren't sexually motivated, and they were almost pretty random.
right.
So I find that very interesting, because with so many serial killers, it is sexually driven. I
Mhm.
mean, Ramirez, Bundy, Dahmer, like, all of them. It's
Mhm.
just there's that aspect to it, but here there wasn't. And that just, I think, leads more credence to the idea that there was a bigger group behind it, because it's not just one person's psychology involved in these crimes, it's multiple people's. And
Right,
so that's
exactly.
why it doesn't make sense to us, because we're just looking at one person's psychology as
Right.
opposed to, like, several.
Yep. And it's like I said, a lot of that draws on, not just him, but how many others are there that we don't know about? For example, like I said, Zodiac, his were completely random and then they just stopped.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, m- I don't know. I've seen a lot of crime documentaries. I watched a lot of Lieutenant Joe Kenda, Homicide Hunter, whole nine yards, and not one, not one time do they just randomly stop. They keep
Right.
going. They may lay low for a few years if they know they're on the radar, but they never just stop. So that makes you
Right.
think, you're like, okay, did this person die off?
Was arrested.
Yeah, were they arrested and we just don't know it? Was there somebody else involved and they took the person out and then it just makes you think.
Yeah.
Right. Like my new favorite show is Dateline. I friggin' love
Hmm.
Dateline.
Classic.
I watch it every day religiously, and like just like it's not even like the shock twist ending. It's just like thinking about what goes through these people's heads. Like
Yeah. Well, and I
and
think that's what's most interesting about serial killers, and why so many people are fascinated by them, because it's like, why? What is
yeah,
making these guys tick? What's
yeah,
making them tick this way? And
right.
it's also very interesting because most of the time it is men. That makes me wonder, is it either because women are, for lack of a better term, smarter and they don't get caught and they don't leave a
Maybe.
trace?
Maybe.
Or is it just because we're not, and this is, so we're not as like violent and outbursty as men
Right.
are? And that's not saying that the male sex gender is just more like that naturally, but because of society, because men can't show emotions, men,
Right.
they
Right.
can't have these things happen to them, so it's more like so much has been emotionally repressed for them, so then they get all fucked up naturally.
Right. And to think about, women serial killers, the only two that come to mind for me are Carla Faye Tucker and Eileen Wuornos. And even in that degree, like you said, like it took forever for them to get caught. They weren't caught right away at all. Like, is it because women are smarter?
No.
Is it because women have kind of like a more compassionate, disposition naturally? Not to say that men don't, but women are kind of taught that it's okay to be softer and all this other stuff. And in some ways, women kind of have men over a barrel because you could easily twist any story and say, yeah, I shot this guy because XYZ. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Yeah, and like with Warnos, she claimed, her side of the story is that those men told her about like horrible, awful things that they'd done, that they were child molesters or that they had raped someone or that they beat their wife. And so she was like, oh, okay, here's
Right.
my gun. Which, I
Right.
mean,
He's like, I'm just
thank
gonna fix
you.
this. Yeah. Yeah. So I mean, like I said, I don't know, like I said, if it is it because, women could twist any story? Do we have more compassion? Is it because we're smarter? Is it because men are taught to not show emotion? And you could ponder that until the end of time and you may never find the answer to it.
Right, because I think it's the psychology and sociology of it all is so knotted together. It's a big ball of Christmas lights that you're never gonna get undone because
Hmm.
it's one and the same at this point.
Right, exactly. Exactly. And you know, going back to like Son of Sam, like this guy legitimately said that his dog told him to kill people. So my question,
His
not
neighbor's dog.
only right, not only is there the cult theory, was this guy tripping acid? Acid was very popular in the 60s and 70s. Was he schizophrenic? Did anybody, at all check for LSD induced psychosis, schizophrenia, quaaludes, this, that, and the next thing? Because who's to say that, he wasn't lying, he wasn't on drugs, he wasn't schizophrenic, any of that, And,
Hmm.
you could easily say the cult theory, but then, well, okay, my neighbor's dog told me to kill people. Dude, if you're hearing dogs talk to you, you're either out of your mind on drugs or you're out of your mind in some other way.
Right, or was that his angle, like they showed in Mindhunter? Was that just his angle to be like, yeah, I'm crazy. Don't send me to jail because I'm crazy.
Right. I could imagine he was smart enough to say, well, if I plead insanity, I could get off. Like John Hinckley. Um,
Yeah.
he was obsessed with Jodie Foster and he pleaded insanity and he got off. I mean, he was remanded to a mental hospital, excuse me, and he just got out in 2019, but he still doesn't have that charge on him because it said not guilty by reason of insanity. So technically, in the eyes of that state, he was exonerated.
Yeah.
So did the Son of Sam take a look at that and say, well, not just that, because that was after the Son of Sam, but did he look and say, well, if I say my neighbor's dog told me to do it, I could get off on this?
Right. Or
And
like you said, did he have some sort of mental health issues or plus
right,
drugs, because
right.
shit,
And
that's a horrible combination.
right, was it both? And like I said, you have to look at the time period. In the 60s and 70s, acid was the big thing. So, you have to wonder, was he on acid? Was he on, quaaludes, this, that, and the next thing? You don't know for sure. And just because he's saying that, how do you know that, that's really a delusion and he's not just, like I said, that he didn't just look and say, okay, I can get off if I'm insane.
Hmm.
So I can continue to do this.
Right.
I just
Yeah.
want to put this disclaimer out there. All of our opinions are our own, and there are some trigger warnings in this.
Yes, and we are not experts, 100% not experts.
No, this is just a friendly discussion.
I'm not a real doctor, I just play one on TV.
Yeah, I'm not a doctor at all, and I just am really passionate about things and deeper thinking.
uh,
um, but and then if you use the drug theory, then that comes into, did every serial killer, I mean, obviously everybody in the world experiments with some kind of drug at some point in time, but did every serial killer who claimed to be insane? Look at Richard Ramirez. He was really into drugs. So you
yeah.
wonder, is that what's causing it? Is there something else underlying? Is it being, is there something underlying that's being exacerbated by the drugs?
That's what I think. I think it's something underlying. I think there's this thing that they're dealing with in their own minds, whatever it is, and then they're self-medicating.
Mm-hmm.
And then that just exacerbates it. That just fuels it and just makes it totally worse. Because if you look, yeah, Ramirez, he was a meth head among other things. And then Dahmer was an alcoholic.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so, and I mean, Charles Manson, but he's a whole nother conversation because he's technically not even a killer that we know of.
Technically. Well, yeah, like you said that we know of, but I mean, but touching on that, all those people that were a part of his cult, they were on Quaaludes and LSD and, you name it, they probably did it. So you
Well, yeah,
wonder,
he fed it to him to brainwash him.
right? So you wonder, is that exacerbating anything that they may already have? Because that seems like the most plausible theory.
Right. Well, and the thing is, Manson was, and if you watch the Sons of Sam documentary, they touch on this. He knew people involved in a cult like church,
Mm-hmm.
and he was like on the outskirts involved. And so he was just charismatic. He knew how to talk to people. He knew how to get what he wanted,
Yep.
and he knew how people's minds worked. I mean, he had been in and out of the judicial system, in and out of
His
juvie
whole
and
life.
jail his entire freaking life.
Mm-hmm.
So he knew how people worked, how he knew what made people tick. So I think for him, it was easy to see these kids are like on the fringes of society. They feel like they don't belong. I just have to make them feel like they belong. I have to
Mm-hmm.
make them feel good. And, the drugs just helped with that. And I mean, I feel like that's cult leader 101 is
Oh
that
yeah.
manipulation shit.
Oh yeah, and he wanted to be a famous rock star, and he was like scorned by, the Beach Boys and Terry Melcher and this and that and that's thing. But you
Right.
know, but I mean, and that's musician 101, that sometimes people just aren't meant to be rock stars. You could be a fantastic songwriter and never make it. You could be a fantastic musician and never make it. That's just how it be. um
Right.
Right, but seriously, that's just how it be sometimes, I mean, and for him to like, and I've seen documentary after documentary claiming, oh well, maybe if the Beach Boys, blah 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 blah, this that and that thing, but who knows if he would have even blown to begin with? You
And
don't
even if
know,
he did, he's still a psychopathic asshole.
right?
Like,
Which brings
sure
me
would have
into
gone down
like,
horribly one way or another.
right, which brings me into like other, singers and everything like that have like killed somebody or conspired to kill somebody. Just because they're famous, they're still gonna do what they would do if they were a normal person.
Right.
Only
Yeah.
difference
And
is
it makes,
only difference is now they're in the limelight and they have millions of dollars. The only difference.
right. And it makes you wonder, some of these famous people, musicians, actors, whatever, that get caught for this shit or have these allegations against them, like speaking on the Manson thread, Marilyn Manson. Like, who's to say if he never made it big, if he wouldn't have like done even more horrible shit, like Ted
Oh
Bundy
yeah.
shit, or you
Oh
know,
yeah. Yeah, and I don't know if you're familiar with the band As I Lay Dying, but their lead singer hired a hitman to kill his wife because he didn't want to get a divorce. Obviously, the hitman didn't go through with it because he was an undercover cop. But you wonder, if he wasn't famous, would he have gone through with that himself? would he have,
Right.
succeeded in that? Like, if he went to
Yeah.
gotten caught, and he only served 6 years in prison for that. If he went to gotten caught, what other worse shit would he have done or could he have done?
Right. Yeah.
You know, so I think that the theory that people say, oh, well, he was scoring because he wanted to be a rock star is bullshit because, when you're in the limelight, you're going to want to be so careful. And, obviously things come out, things come out, as you can see, which is wonderful that it does because people need to be held accountable for their actions all the fucking time.
Right.
They do. They truly do. But,
Yeah.
when you're famous, you're going to want to be careful that things that are questionable that you don't want to get out may not get out. So I think that had he have become a celebrity, I think he would have stayed the same, but it just would have been way more low key.
Yeah. Because maybe if he had someone like a band manager or, a record label or something keeping him on the straight and narrow for the most part, he wouldn't have
Right.
self-destructed and imploded the way that he did. Uh-oh,
Right,
did I lose
exactly,
you? Oh, there you are.
and yep, there we go. Yeah, exactly, and it's like I'm saying, I mean, there's only so much that, like labels and managers and everything can do, but for the most part, especially like if it would have been new, because if he would have popped like right when the Beach Boys were huge and everything, that would have been new and it would have been exciting, and he would have wanted to stay on the straight and narrow. But who's to say that, he's like 5, 10 years in, or even now, if he was like, still alive or whatever, or even, years ago, if he would have still been torn, who's to say, because what happens on the road stays on the road, man. Like, it's like what happens in Vegas. Like,
Mhm.
you know what I mean? Like, who's to say, you're in a different state every night? It's kind of hard to trace you.
Well, unless it's like, "Hey, this band toured in Tennessee and then Kentucky, and there was a dead girl in Tennessee, and then there was a dead girl in Kentucky," then it kinda makes it a
Well,
little
yeah,
easier.
things like that. Yeah. Yeah. But I
I
mean,
think too
and
much like a cop.
yeah. But, and like I said, I think in a lot of ways, it's all, just theory based. And you're like, oh, well, what if, what
That's
if,
all we
what if?
can do.
Right. And, for the longest time, I wanted to be a forensic psychologist. I wanted to go in and talk with these people and find out why they do what they do. But I
Mhm.
realize now that I wouldn't be good at that because I am a thinker. I'd be full of theories, and like even though they told me one thing, I'd be like, okay, this person's lying to me. So what was their other motivation behind this? You know what I mean? So it's
Yeah.
it's a good thing I'm not. So I'm too much of a thinker to do something like you know to do something like that because like I said, I feel like I would go in and I'd talk with these people and they'd say, oh, I did this for this reason. I'd be like, you're lying.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
especially the ones that are master manipulators.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because my mom always says, they could charm the ears off a bull.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, it's like my sister. So, me and, my relationship with Ray Liotta, my sister always says, he could charm the birds out of the trees, and it's true because he's so charismatic, and I tell him all the time, I'm
Mhm.
like, "You're either the best guy ever or you're a fucking serial killer." Because it's like those people that can talk, it's just like you don't fucking know.
Right,
'Cause
and
they
you have to
know, they
wonder.
like, the manipulative ones, they know what you wanna hear, they know how to say what you want them to say. And I'm
Right,
not
right,
saying my Ray Liotta is like that or anything, but
right, and
there
that's
are
why
people
that's
like
why I was
that.
telling you beforehand. Like, you have to wonder, like, are you manipulating? Are you genuine?
Yeah.
Are you a serial killer? Like all this weird stuff, and it's because I watch so many crime documentaries that I'm like, okay, something ain't right here.
Right, well, I mean, there's that too, and I don't know, is that paranoia or is that just, like, being aware? Being
Yeah,
aware in the world that we live in? Because it's
right.
hard for me to say because after working in the legal field for 5.5 years and studying it throughout college, it's just like I'm so jaded to so many things. Like, someone will tell me, like, oh, did you hear? It's so horrible. There was a shooting in so and so place and 3 people died. And I'm like, that's awful. Okay, I need to go run my errands now because it's just like, it is horrible. It's
It
awful,
is.
but it's just like I'm so used to it. I'm so numb to
Right.
so much of it because I've seen
Right.
the worst of the worst.
Yeah.
So is it
Unfortunately.
paranoia or is it just
Right. Is
this
it
is the world
paranoia?
we live in?
Is it speaking from experience, or is the world a shit show? I think it's a little bit of everything, to be
I
honest.
was
I
just
think it's
gonna say it's probably a little bit of both.
yeah, probably all of the above.
Yeah.
But I mean, I don't know. And like I said, I'm not a psychologist in any way, shape, or form, but I've always been fascinated by, and not even just serial killers. Like, why do people do what they do? Why do they act the way that they do? Like, and that
Hmm.
could be with anything. Like, I mean, you go out and you do XYZ, you graffiti something, or you cheat on your spouse or whatever. Like, what makes somebody think to want to do that? You know what I mean?
Right. What in their mind justified this is okay.
Yeah, like, this is fine. I can do this. Like, and you just kind of sit and you think, and you're like, well, wait a minute. Because I don't have that thought process. Do other people think like this? Am I the weird one? Like,
Yeah.
yeah, I don't know.
So see what I find interesting slash very disturbing is okay. So we have these women who will totally sexualize serial killers, and I'm just like, fucking why? And like when Ted Bundy got really popular the past like 2 years because of all the documentaries and then Zac Efron
Mhm.
and whatever, there so many girls are like Ted Bundy was so hot, and it's like he would have beaten you to death and then had sex with you. Like,
Yeah,
I get if you have like a BDSM kink, like whatever, that's cool. But like, no, he would literally beat you to death with like a branch and
not
then have sex with
a
you.
branch.
Like,
I mean, it's true. It's true. But, not only that, he knew he was hot, and that's why he got away with what he did for so long.
see, that's the thing. I don't think he's attractive. Like, I think he looks like a boring Wonder Bread white guy.
Wonder
Like,
Bread white guy. Well, I mean, like,
I think he's boring clearance special dude. But the thing is, he was very charismatic. He
that's
could
the thing.
talk. You
That's the
know,
thing, and that's why I said that brings you back to like Ray Liotta and that other thing. You're like, ooh, I don't know about this.
like, are you this wonderful, or are there dead bodies in your basement?
Yeah. Like, am I gonna go down to your wine cellar one day to get a bottle of wine and just see a skeleton looking at me? Because I
I
need
mean,
to
if
know.
I'm dating a guy that has a wine cellar, I mean, I might not ask questions for a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, a little bit. I mean, it depends though. Does he have barrels of wine, or are they in bottles? Because if it's barrels, I may not question the skeleton for at least 6 months.
But then you have other serial killers like Ramirez, who was also sexualized because he was a good looking dude. Like when you didn't see his teeth, he was a
Oh
good looking
yeah,
dude, you
yeah,
know? Um, but then, but you know what? Also, I think so many women sexualized him because they didn't bring it to the public's eye that he was a child molester. Like, I didn't even know that until I watched the Night Stalker documentary.
yeah.
So, of course, these women are showing up to court as but it's still crazy because it's like he still raped and murdered so many people.
Right,
And it's like, but
exactly.
you're still like, oh, you're so hot. It's like,
Right,
no, you're a
and
fucking monster.
right, and you know what? And it's not just that. It's the fact of, you know, prime example, the Netflix show. People are like, oh my god, Joe's so hot. He's so sweet. He's a fucking lunatic who stalks women and kills anybody who tries to get in the way of his relationship. And I think that some of the reason is because women don't have men chase them.
Yes, and he's another one that I'm like, I don't know, he's a boring white guy.
I mean,
I don't see the appeal.
right,
But I think what it is with the show You is that it's our society is so fucked up that so many men treat women like, yeah, whatever, I'm gonna ignore you, I'm
right,
gonna ghost you, I'm gonna tell you that you look fat or whatever, just like making women feel like shit in
right.
millions of ways that they do. And so they see Joe, and they see how he's dedicated and he cares, and he's always there for her because he's stalking her. He's always there, but and so in their minds, it's like, oh, he's a good guy. He loves her. He's dedicated. It's like that. I think is the big message of like, here's a mirror to our society. We are so fucked up. We treat women so fucked up that they think this is an ideal partner. And it's like, no,
Yeah,
he's a fucking stalker. And that's not
yeah,
saying women are stupid. That's just saying that so many men treat women like shit that
right,
that looks
right,
appealing.
right. And the same thing happened when Suicide Squad came out. Because people were like, "Oh my God, Harley Quinn and the Joker, they're couple goals," and I was like,
Why?
"What?
No, absolutely
No,
not. No, no.
no, no. That's not what we do here."
Mm-mm. I am 100% for the fanfic of Harley and Poison Ivy being together. I think that is much better. I think that's a lot healthier. Even though they're both
But
still villains.
right, but like I said, it goes back to your thing that we're so used to being treated a certain way that we're like, oh my God, couple goals, and you're like, dude, that's like actually very, very, very toxic.
And extremely abusive. Like, someone
Yeah,
doesn't have to punch you in the face for them to be abusing you.
right. Like I mean, you have to, you have to just sit and think, and that's the harsh reality. If you watch Suicide Squad, that's the harsh reality of how some people are. And
Yeah.
some men are like that, and I believe everybody deserves better. Everybody can do better than
Yes.
that. And there's always somebody willing to listen, and always somebody to help you find a way out of that situation, so that you're not in a toxic relationship, or you're not in an abusive relationship. Dump his ass or her ass, or whoever the hell is toxic to you. Dump their ass, dude. You
Yeah.
know, I mean, you can do better. You deserve better.
Yeah, absolutely. And that doesn't even go for just partners. Like, Father's Day is coming up, and every year I see posts about, like, my father's dead, so be sure you appreciate yours. And it's like, as someone who lost their dad, like, if your dad is a piece of shit, you can cut him out of your life. That's totally okay.
Right,
Like,
right, like it's okay to cut out toxic family, or toxic friends, or people who just make you feel like you're not worthy of the love that you truly deserve. I mean,
yeah,
it's it's okay to do that. I mean, nobody's nobody's gonna hate you for wanting what's best for yourself.
right.
And the person you're cutting out, if they don't like it, fuck them, bro. I
Yeah,
mean,
because if you're
you know
setting your boundaries and your healthy expectations, and they're like, that's fucked up, that's wrong, you should probably cut them out of your life.
right.
Boundaries are healthy.
Right, exactly. And if you say, "Look, I'm not comfortable with this. I'm not comfortable with you talking to me this way or that way or the next thing," and I get it. And unfortunately, a lot of toxic and abusive relationships often end in the death of that person. And I feel like it's very unfortunate that that's become a norm, and that's why people are so afraid. But I mean, I feel like in some ways, you can walk away, and there is hope.
Yes, there is. There's a lot of resources out there now, so many more than there used to be. And I mean, really, it's just a Google search away. Just use your incognito tab.
Yeah, exactly. And you know what? Like, I mean, like, and if you're in immediate danger, set up a code, like with your friends or something. Like, call and order a pizza, and then your friend will know to like alert, the proper people that need to be there, so that you can get help safely.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, like I saw on Facebook a couple months ago about something about how somebody dialed 911 and they ordered a pizza, and the operator got it. Like after, like they said, "Oh yeah, I want
Mm,
that brownie on it." Like they got it like after that, and then they
yeah.
were able to avert a situation from turning possibly tragic.
Yeah. That is so smart because then you have to give them your address. That's so fucking smart.
Yeah,
I was like, I
exactly.
will never forget. Oh my God, the balls on this woman. So we had a case. where when I was working at the DA's office, where a guy broke into a woman's house and she was in bed, she was asleep, and her daughter was asleep next to her, and she just woke up and this guy is there laying in bed with her and her daughter, and he's like out of his mind on, on drugs or just crazy, whatever. And she's talking to him and trying to keep him calm, and then she's like, "Why don't we go outside for a cigarette?" And so they get up and they go out, and he leaves first. And she closes the door and locks it. It's just like, that's so fucking smart. Like,
Yeah.
oh, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yeah, like innovation.
It's
You
just
know,
like, it's easier said than done, but to keep
right.
calm in those situations.
Right, exactly. I mean, and it's not even about being calm. It's just about, kind of think outside the box. And, it's like that meme. And I hate to turn this into comedy because it's not, but, modern problems require modern solutions.
Yeah,
Yeah. If even if you don't smoke, just be like, hey, want to go hit a vape? And then let them out the door first, push them out the door. If you've ever seen the Golden Girls when Rose steals back her teddy bear, push them out the door, slam the door, and lock it.
protect
And
that
then if
teddy
they
bear, man.
Yeah, and then if they smash your window by that time, you'll at least be on the phone to call for help.
Right.
Yeah, or you can get to another room safely or something like that.
Grab a big ass cast iron pan,
Yep.
a couple of kitchen
Whoever's
knives.
nearest.
But going back to serial killers and sexualizing them, I was, because it's so interesting with Son of Sam, they were trying to make it like he's a sexually motivated killer when he wasn't, and or at least I believe that he wasn't. It doesn't make sense just the way it was, and
Right.
they tried to play it off like, oh, he had problems with women, he never had a girlfriend, but then they found out that he did have a girlfriend. And the thing is, like, I don't know, maybe I'm alone in this, but I think Berkowitz was kind of attractive. Like in some of his photos, like he was a good looking dude. And but then he was never sexualized.
Right.
But then Ramirez and Bundy, who like tore, like literally tore women apart. Like there are women flocking to their trials in droves, being like, "Oh, he's so hot." It's okay.
Right.
Whereas Berkowitz, I mean, he just shot at people, and I don't mean that to like minimalize it or anything, but it wasn't
Right.
as brutal. It wasn't as animalistic.
Right. That's like with the Menendez brothers. They're both married. One of them has children through conjugal visits.
Oh, gross. That's how Bundy was too.
No,
So
I really don't see
nice.
it. I don't. I'm sorry, I don't see the attraction. No
Well, there are
offense.
so many women who say like, "Well, you know, they're not cheating on you," and it's like
How do you know that?
that. Well, that. How do you know that? And also, like that's your requirement for a good partner is that you know they're not cheating on you. Like,
Dude,
why
I
not
mean,
have a non-sexual relationship with a priest?
you do realize that they could have conjugal visits from anybody. They could be pen pals with anybody all over the world. Like, how do you know for sure they're not cheating on you just because they're confined to one place? Okay, a dude to be on house arrest doesn't mean he's not cheating on you.
Right? Yeah.
Like, what? That like that's such an invalid argument. You know what I mean?
That's my criteria. You just can't cheat on me.
I don't
You can be a total serial killer,
I
totally
don't care
brutal.
what you've done.
Yeah,
Oh, yikes.
yeah. But
Yikes.
yeah, so I found that interesting that, we have just, and it's not like standards, but like, well, outcome. We have an outcome for these two serial killers of like them being seen as hot and sexy, and then another one where not so much.
Right. Right.
But
And you kind of wonder, you're like, why? Like, aside from what makes the serial killers tick, what makes people attracted to them? What makes people so interested in them?
yeah,
Like, and it's like I said, the people that marry people that are in prison. One of the members of the Manson family was married twice and has 4 children as well. So you wonder, what are these people finding attractive in these people?
Right.
Like,
I don't know. I think it's
I,
also because they're manipulative people. They know how to talk to people.
right.
And people who have like low self-esteem and shit. And so they know how to manipulate them. And
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. See,
I mean,
I think that that has something to do with it, but I also think in some ways, and that happens everywhere, with finding them attractive or being their pen pal or whatever. I think a lot of it kind of stems from the initial fascination. Why did they do what they did? And in some
yeah,
cases, it blossoms into something more than you may have intended it to become.
right. And then it kind of comes back to, is it nature or nurture? Or is it both? And in
Right.
some cases, it seems like it's heavily one over the other. But I think
Okay.
that's because you can never, when it comes to psychology, when it comes to the human mind and the human soul, if you believe in that kind of thing, it can never be measured one way every time.
Right. We have a comment from Sarah. It says maybe they are manipulative and also just a fascination. See, I agree. I agree that, like I said, I believe it starts off as a fascination, and maybe once they get to know this person more, maybe they get manipulated into it becoming more than they initially intended it to become.
Right. Yeah. That, and I think also just when these guys go to prison, like Charles Manson, he was in and out of the justice system, in and out of jail his entire life from youth to adulthood. And there are accounts of him, um, of people having raped him in prison. And so I wonder if that's kind of part of it, like by manipulating people into and out of relationships through your conjugal visits and stuff, it gives you that sense of power back.
Right.
So you don't
Right.
feel completely helpless. Like it's like, okay, this shit's happening and it's horrible, but I can ignore it for a minute because I can have control over someone else.
Right. Right. And ultimately, it does come down to a control factor. And again, you wonder, are these people narcissists? Are they compensating for something? Are they just really good, talkers? Are they just very charming? And again, it spins you into why. Why are they so good at getting people to believe things that people not that wouldn't necessarily believe in other instances?
Right. Yeah.
And is it like, saying what you want to hear or this or that or the next thing? Today I was watching a documentary on Pamela Smart. How did she convince a 14-year old boy to kill her husband?
I just listened to one of my new favorite podcasts to listen to on Spotify is Morning Cup of Murder,
Mm-hmm.
which if you
Morning
haven't
cup of
listened,
murder.
I love it. Um, so when I first started listening to these podcasts, I was really into Monday Murder Mystery Makeup by Bailey Sarian, and I fucking
Mm-hmm.
love her. But she's very sporadic with her posting. So then I found this Morning Cup of Murder, and I actually just listened to one today that was about that. And that's another piece of the psychological thing. How did she convince a 14-year-old to do this? And also, why would you want to be involved with a 14-year-old?
Dude, she was literally my age at the time, and that is disgusting to even think about. And I was reading that they bonded over their love of heavy metal music.
Yep.
Okay, buddy. Just because somebody likes the same music as me does not mean I want to be in a relationship with them. I'm sorry.
Right. Anyone that comes into my work is like, I like Arctic Monkeys. I'm not gonna be like, take your pants off. Like,
Right? Like, dude, like that's like if somebody comes up to me and they're like, I like the Amity Affliction, I'm gonna be like, okay, marry me. Like that is such a bullshit excuse. They liked the same music, and you're like, uh,
right.
okay.
Well, and in the podcast I listened to as well, she highlighted that, and I wonder if the media highlighted it that way to shit on heavy metal music. The same way they did with, okay, now we know that Marilyn Manson is
a piece of shit.
allegedly a garbage person.
Right.
We won't know until like more evidence in the trial and et cetera, et cetera. But at the time of Columbine, they wanted to blame him and World of Warcraft
And
because that makes sense.
KMFDM and Doom and
Right,
Quentin Tarantino too, because they had said that they wanted Quentin Tarantino to direct a movie about their lives. That doesn't make it Tarantino's fault that they did what they did.
right. Yeah, and it makes me wonder, like, was that highlight of Smart and her 14-year-old beau, or, let's call it what it is, victim, um,
Yeah, yeah,
was that just the media's way of spinning it like, oh, it's heavy metal's fault?
right.
I don't know.
I mean, heavy metal has always been deemed the devil's music, and so is rock and roll. And you're like, um, and I feel like when it comes to music, and some music is very violent and very brutal, and I don't recommend people listen to it.
Yeah,
A lot of death metal is very, very violent if you listen to if you true I mean, a lot of times you can't understand the lyrics, but if you truly look up those lyrics, it is very, very violent content. And it's not for the
yeah,
faint of heart, it's not for people who are easily influenced. However, in the same respect, you can't necessarily blame your actions on something. I mean, like I said, if it inspired you, I get it, but it's like the whole theory with Natural Born Killers. Why did so many people want to replicate that movie? Is it brainwashing? Is it more or less just people looking for somebody to blame so that they can take the heat off themselves? Does it go back to uh psychiatry and things like that? Where does that intersect at all, that there's a connection? Like I said, and I acknowledge that death metal, a lot of it is very brutal. Some heavy metal is very brutal. Some rock music is very brutal. If you ever listen to A Little Piece of Heaven by Avenged Sevenfold, it is a absolute terrible, terrible song lyrically.
mm,
It's all about killing and dismembering a body so that you can be with them for eternity. And you wonder where does that intersect with people's actual thoughts? Because if that was to blame, everybody would be going out and doing that rather than just a select few people here and there.
right. And I think the media focuses on that shit because it is so hard for us to understand. Even psychologists, people who are trained in these fields, it's still hard to oftentimes get to the root of it, to the root of people's actions and behaviors and reactions. And so it's like, well, let's just blame Quentin Tarantino because that's just, I mean, people aren't actively thinking that's easier. But in their minds, it's like it gives them some sense of relief because if there's a boogeyman, then we can understand it better.
Right. Right, exactly. Like for example, and it's like I said, listening to A Little Piece of Heaven by Avenged Sevenfold. First of all, it's a 7 minute song. Second of all, one of the lyrics is "Eyes over ripped his heart out right before his eyes over easy." Are you seriously gonna sit here and tell me that that's not violent? And
Right.
it's funny because if you look back at the 80s, music wasn't so much like that. It wasn't really violent. I mean, it was weird. It was heavy. It was aggressive, but there wasn't anything like that. I can tell you, I listened to a lot of 80s metal, 80s rock. You know, it was mostly
Yeah.
about sex, partying, and what your bros are doing later.
Right, exactly. And you're right, it's so funny because in the 80s, like if you watch Detroit Rock City,
I love
one of
that
my
movie.
favorite movies. Oh my god, I love it.
You know
Um,
what? It's horrible, but it's a good horrible.
yes, yeah. I think it kind of makes fun of itself.
Yeah, I love
But
it. And
with
Edward
that,
Furlong was a dreamboat back in the day.
who was?
Edward Furlong.
Oh my god, I loved him. Yeah, when I was
Mhm.
a kid, when I saw him in Terminator 2, I was like, I'm gonna marry him. I loved
Oh
him.
yeah, I saw him in Terminator, Pet Sematary. I think I've seen every single one of his movies because I developed this like unhealthy obsession with him for a while in high school. I watched T2, Pet Cemetery, Brain Scan, A Home of Our Own, Little Odessa, blah 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 blah. The
Oh my
list
god, I didn't even
goes
know he was
on.
in that much.
Oh my god, he was. Dude, you
And
have to
now
see
he's just in, like,
Brain.
really bad sci-fi original movies.
Yeah, like, he was in Arachnoquake for, like, 30 seconds, and I was like, "What?" Although he although he was in the Night of the Demons remake, and he was very good in that. I'll give him
Mm.
that. But you have to
Great.
check out Brain Stand, and everybody watching, if you haven't, it is
Yes, I
available
do.
on Amazon Prime. It's available illegally on YouTube. Shh, you didn't hear that from me. But no, but seriously, it is uploaded on YouTube, so you can watch it for free. It's kind of low quality, but it's okay. But I definitely recommend you watch it. It is it's terrible. It's a cheesy '90s horror movie, but it's Eddie Furlong in his prime.
But, yeah, in Detroit Rock City, you have the Mothers Against whatever it was, but they were
Yeah,
basically against Kiss,
yeah.
because it's
Matt
the
Long.
devil's music.
Yeah, Matt
And they said that a lot about Motley Crue as well, even though they had a song that was Shout at the Devil. But there's a whole story behind that. Because it originally was supposed to be Shout with the Devil, but then some spooky shit went down and Nikki Sixx changed it. But yeah, so you had all the moms and the church groups condemning rock music in the 80s. And well, now it's just like whenever something bad happens,
yeah.
all media wants to condemn rock music, video games. I feel like video games is the big target now.
Right. And American Satan, if you've seen that movie, I know you have, I showed it to you, but if
Hmm.
anybody listening or watching has seen that, that pretty much touches primarily on that about how, people think that rock and roll is devil's music and that to make it in the music industry, you have to sell your soul. But there's the other side of the spectrum where that is not the case. And like I said, back in the 80s, like I said, and I get it, there were some suggestive songs, like you said, Motley Crue, Shout at the Devil. Rush, 2112 has a pentagram right on the friggin' album cover. But that doesn't necessarily mean that they have violent lyrical content, because if
Right.
you look up the lyrics to a lot of Rush or Motley Crue songs, they don't really have a specific thing that they're talking about. It's just what it is. And I think that part of the reason why people automatically look to rock music is because of the aggressive sound it has. Because when rock and roll first emerged, it didn't sound like that. Rock and roll in the 50s was Elvis, Buddy Holly, the Big Bopper, and it sounds nothing like it did then, like it
Hmm.
does.
Yeah.
By the way, rest in peace to the Big Three. I love Buddy Holly and the Big Bopper and Elvis and Richie Valens. um, yeah, my music taste is kind of all over the place.
Oh yeah, me too. And it's just like I pretty much like everything except Justin Bieber and country music. So.
Okay, fair point. Okay, no, there's a couple country songs I do like, but they're like Willie Nelson.
Okay, but that doesn't count. I don't feel like that's country. The
True,
same with
it's
Johnny Cash, because people are like Johnny Cash is country. It's like, is it though? Because for me, country is like tractor. She thinks my tractor's sexy, and it's just like, please
but
stop
it but it
talking.
comes back into the same thing with rock. How rock was different then than it is now.
That's
Technically,
true,
back in the day, Willie Nelson and Johnny Cash were considered country.
right? That's true.
Same with
That's very true.
oh my god, I know his name, Waylon Jennings.
Mm.
Which, fun fact, Waylon Jennings actually toured with Buddy Holly. He was supposed to be on the plane the night that the music died, but he flipped a coin
Oh.
and lost his seat to Richie Valens.
Oh, I think I did hear that. The
So
coin flipping thing.
another
Yeah,
fun
I've
fact,
definitely heard that before.
yeah, another fun fact, yeah, was Richie Valens was actually terrified of airplanes.
Oh.
Because when he was
Ugh.
a child, his best friend was struck and killed by an airplane that had crashed in a school's I don't know if it was a field or if it was like a parking lot or a playground, but after that he was very,
Jesus.
very traumatized traumatized and he was terrified of airplanes. So he didn't even want to be on the airplane, but at the time the bus they were on did not have any heat on it, and it was the middle of winter in Iowa. So I've heard Midwest winters get even worse than they do here. So I can't imagine being on a bus with no heat.
Yeah. Oof. Well, going back to 80s
So
music
yeah,
and
that
and
oh
like the
yeah, because
bands
I got way off topic.
using
I was like, by the way,
no,
sorry.
it's all good. But talking about 80s music and like them using pentagrams and stuff, uh brought me back to the idea of, so like those bands did that for a lot of the time, like I feel like 99% of the time, for shock value, you know?
Oh
And
yeah.
so what are your thoughts on Richard Ramirez and being all like, Hail Satan, and like leaving the pentagram at one or two of the crimes? Like, do you think that was legit? That he was really into that shit? Or do you think it was just like a shock value thing, or like a trying to lead the cops into a different direction thing at first? Or what are your thoughts on that?
I think it was a little bit of shock value, a little bit of him actually practicing that and him trying to throw the cops off his path, because you saw a very similar thing with the Manson family. They would write, cryptic messages on the walls to try and throw the cops off of their trail. So I think it was a little bit
Right,
of
but
all.
they had a plan. They had,
Yeah, yeah,
their
a whole plan, and it was based on the Beatles and all this weird shit. I mean, I personally like the
right. But did
album.
Ramirez have a plan? Or was he
No,
just a fucking monster on the loose?
No, I don't think he had a plan, but it's like I'm saying, I think it was a little bit of all three. I think he kind of did like dabble in that because there was proof he
Hmm.
did. Then I think he did it for the shock value, and I think he also did it to throw the police off of his trail so that they
Yeah.
didn't immediately think it was him. And then when they caught him, why he did that in court, I think that was just a shock value, and that was just one last, fuck you.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think you're
Yeah,
totally right on that.
yeah.
And
But I mean,
I'm almost 100% sure it was him, that when he was a kid, his father or his uncle, some male parental like figure, to punish him, would take him to a nearby cemetery and chain him to a cross in the cemetery. So it would not surprise me
oh
if
yeah, yeah.
he went in the total opposite direction.
I know that his cousin also murdered his
Was a
wife right in
fucking
front of him.
psycho.
Yeah, murdered his wife right in front of him when he was a kid, and they think that that's kind of what influenced him in the first place. Which wouldn't
Well,
shock
yeah,
me.
and
I mean, when you
he
see
would.
something traumatizing like that, yeah,
Well, not only that, but he would recount in detail to Ramirez the shit that like people he killed and the shit he did in war.
yeah,
Like
yeah. And I mean, he was
when
young.
he
He
was
died.
like 11.
Yeah, he was young. He was impressionable. Of course, that's gonna stick with him, and he's gonna think that that's okay, even though it's not.
Right.
Yeah, so I mean, like I said, I mean, ultimately it was his actions that led him to where he was, but you can definitely see what influenced the way he acted.
Yeah. And that's the interesting thing, where it's like nature versus nurture, and we're never gonna know. But me
Right,
personally,
exactly.
I think
And
it's uh a little bit of both, and for everyone it's different amounts.
oh
Sometimes
yeah.
it's 10% and 90%, sometimes it's 50-50, sometimes 60-40. It's just each person
Oh
is
yeah.
different.
Yeah, I think it all depends, because if you look at obviously Psycho is a classic, but for those who did not know, Psycho is based off of the real life serial killer and grave robber Ed Gein. Um and
That's a fascinating story.
Norman Bates' character is based off of him. He had a close relationship with his mother, but his mother was very domineering. And, you know, again, it's nature versus nurture.
Right.
So, was he affected by the treatment from his mom? Was he affected by, you know, his love for his mother? And even if you watch Psycho, you're like, okay, this guy's out of his mind. Like, what's the deal
Yeah.
with the mother? You know what I mean? Like, because
Right.
because in the beginning of the movie, they automatically open up that can of worms and say all this shit about, Mrs. Bates, but then you find out Norman killed her. And you're like, okay, why?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and I think because, and there was on Morning Cup of Murder, one of the episodes I was listening to, I can't remember the killer, or maybe it was Murder Mystery Makeup, but on one of them, it was a killer who was very close to his mother, and it wasn't Geen, it was a different one, but he was very close to his mother, and people made fun of him, calling him a mama's boy, and saying he was weak and stuff.
John Wayne Gacy.
And huh?
John Wayne Gacy.
No, it wasn't a big one. It was like one I'd never heard of before.
Oh, okay, yeah, because he was very close with his mother, and I know his father used to tell him that he was weak and he was a mama's boy. That's why I asked.
Yeah, and I think that's the reason is because it's like that societal thing again of like men can't be soft, men can't understand or feel at all emotions other than like anger and lust. But I think it has to do with that, and they're close to their mothers because they're like, I have feelings,
Right.
and you let me express them. But then if the mother is a little too domineering, and then whatever psychosis shit the kid has
Right.
going on, it's just like it just battles, and then society things thrown in there, just amplifying it all.
Right. Again, it comes down to the question of why, and and sometimes you look at people and they have very good backgrounds, and you can obviously tell that they do, but somewhere down the line it goes wrong, and you're like, okay, what happened? Like, what went wrong? What changed? What snapped? This, that, the next thing.
Right. Well, and it's kind of like it reminds me of one of our relatives who I will not name that I'm pretty sure is a psychopath. Like, I'm almost 100% sure he's a fucking psychopath. And growing up, he was a bastard. And that was a big deal back in the day, like if you were a child out of wedlock and then your mom doesn't even know who your biological father is, I think it's just that societal aspect of like it just fucks a kid up.
Right. And I think that a lot of the pressure from society, and I always say, some of the hippies, not all the hippies, because, a lot of them are out there. But some of them had the right idea when they wanted to drop out of society, live in the woods, and not be in contact with anybody. Because sometimes that's the way to be.
Oh
Because
yeah.
society will fuck you up, more so than anything else because they have a certain standard. You have to look like this. You have to do this. You have to do this. You have to do that. And you're like, what? Like, dude, I just want to live.
Right. And then it sucks because that these fucking horrible people come along like Charles Manson or Jim Jones, and they manipulate that part of people, and
Right.
they're like, I accept you for who you are. I love you. But then at the same time, Charles Manson is like, but you can only listen to my music and the Beatles music. And it's like, so it's the same monster just wearing a different mask.
Could you
And I love the idea of a whole bunch of like-minded people living on a commune and being
Yeah, me
self-sustaining
too.
and stuff. But then I also think like the moment someone who's very charismatic gets in charge, it's going to be a fucking Jonestown all over again.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, I agree. But speaking of only listening to the Beatles music, could you imagine if you were just living on a commune, just trying to mind your own business, and you just hear obla d, obla da at least 35 different times in a day? I think I would just get in a car, leave, and re-enter society and never look back.
Oh yeah, I would
I
risk,
mean,
like how they're like, you can't leave, no one can leave, you'll be shot. It's like I'll risk it.
yep,
I don't
I'll
even.
risk it. I mean,
So
don't
many
get me
people are going to want to crucify me after this, but I don't like the Beatles. I'm
Oh
not a
no,
fan. I think they're overrated.
oh no, you see, I love the Beatles, but if I just heard that piano riff repeatedly for obla di obla da, I would obla di obla da the fuck out of here.
Yes, absolutely.
Like, Jesus Christ, like, dude. I mean, I get bored of the music I listen to, and I only listen to it like once a day, and I'm like, yep, I've had enough. Like, I
Yeah.
couldn't imagine listening to the same thing on a constant loop.
Yeah. Well, it's like I have several playlists that I love and I listen to over and over and over again, and I will, and then I'll go for like 3 months without listening to it because it'll drive me
Oh
fucking
yeah.
crazy.
Oh yeah,
And then
me
I'll
too.
hate it, and it's like, I don't wanna hate this music, I love this music.
Yeah, exactly. But sometimes you just need a break. You're like, I don't want to hate this, so I have to give it up for right now.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but that's about all I have to say. I think we did. I think we covered our topics pretty well.
I think so. I mean, honestly, I could go on for another hour, but I don't think anyone wants that.
Oh yeah, dude. I could go on till like midnight, but um, you want to keep it under 2 hours. We're at an hour and 10, so
Yeah, yeah, no, that's cool.
yeah, because you don't want people to get bored. I
Right, and,
speaking
just
of
us
that,
rambling.
right. Speaking of getting bored, I love the Harry Potter series, but dear God, I cannot sit through an entire Harry Potter movie. I can't sit through The Godfather. I can't sit through long movies. I get bored. I get antsy. I have to get up and walk around the room. It drives people nuts. But like, if I have Harry Potter and the Chamber of Secrets on, God knows I'm not watching it. I'm listening to it, but I'm walking around the room to entertain myself so that I don't get too bored.
You need an intermission.
Yeah. Like, you ever seen Gone with the Wind and you have an intermission and it's like 15, 20 minutes? Perfect. Or dude, even theater plays. Theater plays are perfect because you see like, maybe 45 minutes to, a 2 hour act one. And then there's a break, there's an intermission, you can go do what you want, walk around, get something to eat, get something to drink. You come back and you're ready for act two. You can't do that when the movie's going straight through.
Right, yeah, very true.
Especially with commercials, because you're like, please, God, end it. Please, I
Yeah.
don't want to watch these commercials. Just let me watch the rest of the movie. Please get these commercials off.
Right, like, I was barely holding on till the end anyway, and now you wanna throw fucking Rachel
Yeah,
Ray at
right.
me.
Yeah. To be honest with you, sometimes with very long movies like that, if I see commercials on and I'm like halfway through, I'll just get annoyed and either turn off my TV or change the channel entirely. I'm just like, I'm done. Which is why
Right.
I think Netflix and Hulu and Amazon is perfect. Although some streaming services do have ads, Hulu, Tubi. But I think that that's perfect because then the commercials don't make you want to change the
Commit
channel.
murder.
I was looking for the proper word, you know. Um but yeah, so that's all I have to say. Oh, Sarah said I thoroughly enjoyed watching today. Well, we enjoyed having you, Sarah. Our
Yeah, thank you. Thank you
our
for
viewer
joining us.
Yeah, our viewership fluctuated up and down, and like I said, I'll obviously put in the description that there's trigger warnings and all that fun stuff.
Yeah,
Um
I think
but
there always will be given our topics of interest.
yeah, and it's for no other reason, but it's just something that we like to discuss and speak about, and sometimes the truth of
Right.
those topics is not always sunshines and roses.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Yeah, now there's some horror movies where you could be like, dude, like that movie was fucking like putrid, like I'd never watch that again. But like, when you talk about things like this, oh, the truth isn't always great. It's just stating the facts of what happened in that case.
Right, and that's the thing is, like, on this podcast, we plan to talk about movies and video games and shit, but topics like these, it's shit that actually happened. These are real life
Right.
events, so it can be quite harsher for some
Right.
people, and
And
that's totally
said,
understandable.
like I said, I don't agree with anything at all. I think it's all fucked up, but it's just explaining the reality of what those people did and what their reality was and what truly happened.
Right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just stating, but this was a lot of fun. I enjoyed this. I
Yes,
am
I
Alana.
can't wait for more. I'm sorry, what was that?
Yeah, I am Alana. That's Jamie. We can't wait for more. Tune into our next episode. We will reveal the topic the day of to keep you in suspense because that, my friends, is why they call me the master of suspense. That's Sir Alfred Hitchcock said that, not me. Anyway, um, but we'll reveal
Identity theft is a real crime, Alana.
that. Identity theft is not a joke, Jim. Anyway,
That's right.
you know,
But yeah, and we're planning on so far doing this every other week. But if you guys want to see more, let us know, and we'll see about working in weekly things. If
and
you have topics you'd like us
yeah,
to cover, let us know. We're always open to suggestions.
And also, if you would like to be a guest and talk about these topics, please no yelling, and your opinions are your own only, and our opinions are our own only. We're not here to argue. We're not here to fight. We're just here
No.
to have a good old discussion. So if you want to come on the podcast and you're not about, arguing or fighting or drama or this or that or the next thing, shoot us a message. Let us know. Um, but yeah, otherwise, I'm drumming on my desk. Anyways, otherwise, check this out on Spotify. As soon as I get it all done being edited, I can't give you a concrete date as to when it will drop, but all episodes will be available on Spotify eventually as soon as I get them edited, among other things I have to edit. um, but yeah, you can check them out on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, if that's a thing. I don't have an Android, so I don't know, but wherever you listen to podcasts, it'll be there.
We'll be haunting you.
Yeah. I think I saw you in my sleep, darling. Yeah. Well, this was episode 1 of the Ghoulfriends podcast, and I'm going to quote Scooby Doo now and make sure that the next time you tune in, you go out with a couple of old ghoul friends. Hey, that was really dramatic how my light turned off.
Perfect.
Yeah. Yeah, that was great.
All right, guys.
All
Well, we
right.
will see you next time.
And remember,